17 Celsius, but very windy, again to the northwest.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
With thanks to Variety Cruises, a family company sailing since 1942, you have the chance to win a £10,000 7-night small boat cruise for two. With flights, meals, excursions and drinks included, you'll be able to choose from any one of their 2025 Greek adventures and explore Greece like never before. Plus, you'll also win £10,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer sizzle. And we'll pack you off with these luxury travel gifts. For a chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 26th of April. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
SUV drivers in Oxford will face higher parking charges. Proposals tabled by the local Green Party or passed by the City Council. The motion argues that heavier cars like SUVs cause more damage to roads, are more likely to seriously injure or kill pedestrians, and cause more illnesses due to pollution. However, the Alliance of British Drivers has condemned the plan as absolutely outrageous. Well, let's get the thoughts now of the legendary motoring journalist, Quentin Wilson. Quentin, welcome to the show. Always a pleasure. We hear a lot about the war on motorists, this time targeting SUVs because of their weight, and the charges could be astronomical. This idea first started in Paris. Now it's coming to Oxford. Can you tell us a bit about how it would work?
OK, so the idea is that the charges will penalise people who drive heavier SUVs and I guess by implication electric cars, although Oxford Council haven't said exactly what they're going to do with EVs. But this is all based around this notion of SUVs being heavier than passenger cars, therefore wearing out the roads more. Now, there was a study, I've got it here in front of me, from the University of Edinburgh in 2022 that said real-world tests found that overwhelmingly the wear is caused by large vehicles, buses, heavy good vehicles. Road wear from cars and motorcycles is so low that this is immaterial. Now, obviously, driving around a medieval city like Oxford in an SUV isn't the brightest thing in the world to do. But the idea that we should penalise the owners of these cars based on imperfect science that's been read on social media, I think is completely wrong.
Very good morning to you. I'm Ben Leo, alongside this week Emily Carver, and this is Saturday Morning Live.
It's great to have your company this morning, and we have got quite an action-packed show, don't we?
We have indeed. All the day's top stories with our panel today, CEO and founder of Youth Vote UK, Alex Cairns, and author and commentator, Nikki Hodgson.
Excellent stuff. Now, Humza Yousaf's controversial hate crime bill, well, it came into force this week, didn't it? But what will this mean for sport in Scotland? We'll be joined by Scottish footballing legend ahead of the Old Firm derby tomorrow.
Yes, and I'm not sure we can repeat some of the chants that will be heard in the stadiums tomorrow, but...
Will they be banned?
I think the whole stadium's at risk of getting arrested under the SNP. Elsewhere, we're going to be meeting our greatest Briton this week, an inspirational man who set up a charity for the vulnerable during the COVID pandemic. I can't wait to meet him and introduce him to you.
And we've also got some bombshell polling from GB News. It is bombshell.
People's poll. What does it say?
We're going to get into the nitty-gritty. I'm not going to reveal that yet.
Right, okay.
People will have to stay tuned if they want to find out what the polling shows.
Explosive results, no less.
Explosive results. But also...
some good news. Peter Andre, of course, this is his show. I'm covering. He and his wife, Emily, have welcomed their third child. His baby girl, he says... I'm not sure if we've got a picture. He says is very healthy. That she was born on Tuesday. No name just yet, but Pete said we feel very overwhelmed right now. Mum and daughter are doing amazing, and Pete's off for the next, I'm not sure, 6, 7, 8 weeks.
Well, that's such a lovely news, isn't it?
Yeah.
Start the Saturday morning with all the doom and gloom. Another lovely new baby.
Yeah, good stuff. We'll have a picture for you later in the show, so stay tuned on that. Also, don't forget to send your emails in, all your views, gbviews@gbnews.com. But before all that, here's your news headlines with TV's Ray Addison.
That's right. It's 2 minutes past 10. Good morning to you. Our top stories this hour. A Conservative MP says he was the first whistleblower to alert police to the parliamentary honey trap sexting scam. Bosworth MP Dr Luke Evans says he was the victim of cyber flashing as the Met launched an investigation into unsolicited messages with Leicestershire police. On Thursday, Tory MP William Ragg told The Times that he'd sent intimate pictures of himself to someone on a gay dating app and was then manipulated into providing colleagues' phone numbers. So far, around a dozen MPs, staff and journalists are known to have been targeted.
The first set of messages I got was on a day I was with my wife, and I got a one-time open photo on WhatsApp of an explicit image of a naked lady. As soon as I got these, the next day I reported it to the police, the authorities and the chief whip. 10 days later, I got another set of messages. This time, however, I was sat with my team in the constituency office, so we were able to record the conversation and catch photos and videos of the messages coming through, including another explicit female image. I've put my name up to say, well, I hope others come forward. I'm just pleased I blew the whistle, reported it to the authorities, and it's now being looked into.
Rail passengers are facing fresh travel chaos as train drivers continue striking in a long-running pay dispute. Members of ASLEF at 6 companies have walked out, leaving some areas with no services all day. Chiltern, TransPennine Express and Northern will not run any trains, while there will be reduced services on Great Western, LNER and Heathrow Express. Engineering work means there will be no trains between London's Paddington and Reading. Nearly £17 million worth of drugs has been seized by the Royal Navy after it intercepted smuggling speedboats in the Caribbean Sea. Across 2 operations, HMS Trent seized 200 kilograms of cocaine following a port visit to the island of Martinique. Defence Secretary Grant Shapps says it shows the Navy's commitment to disrupt and dismantle drug traffickers. Former PM Boris Johnson has described calls to end arms sales to Israel as shameful. There's been international demands to hold Israel to account for the deaths of 7 aid workers, including 3 Brits. John Chapman, James Henderson and James Kirby were killed by an Israeli airstrike. Israel has since dismissed 2 officers, describing the deaths as a grave mistake. Lord Cameron says the UK will now carefully review the findings of a report into the incident. Workers across the country have today been granted the legal right to request flexible working from the day that they start a new job. Previously, it only applied if someone had worked for their employer for 26 weeks or more. Flexible working is defined as a way that suits an employee's needs, for example, having flexible timings or working from home. Experts believe it could benefit millions and increase productivity. Reckless Tory tax pledges will leave home buyers worse off, Labour is warning. Labour warns, excuse me. The party says the Conservatives' long-term ambition to scrap national insurance contributions will create a £46 billion black hole. Their analysis suggests first home buyers could be £280 worth off each year due to an increase in mortgage repayments. Shadow Minister Alison McGovern told us the policy will harm young couples.
But it's hardly fair to put at risk that position that people are in when they're trying to buy their first home, when they're really saving and making these sorts of unfunded tax commitments has that effect. It's worse for people who are in that position who struggle to be able to buy their own home.
Weather and Storm Kathleen is expected to bring heavy gusts and rain and the highest temperatures of the year so far as it hits the UK today. Pushing in from the Atlantic, the storm is set to bring gusts of up to 70 miles per hour to Northern Ireland and the west of Britain. Temperatures could also reach 22 degrees in the east. A yellow weather warning for wind is in effect until 10 p.m. and covers Cornwall, much of Wales, parts of Lancashire and Cumbria, and up into central Scotland and Northern Ireland. And more than 150 people have been rescued from floodwaters in Australia after 24 hours of torrential rain. 72 rescues were carried out in Sydney, where low-lying suburbs saw dangerous flooding with a month's worth of rainfall. Residents in New South Wales were warned to move to higher ground as emergency services received over 4,000 calls for help. Officials say flood levels in Western Sydney are continuing to rise. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now, back to Ben and Emily.
Well, thank you for joining us this morning. So let's get straight to our top story, the latest opinion poll from People's Poll for GB News. Now, it shows a strong majority of people want to know the level of crime being committed by asylum seekers and illegal migrants.
Yeah, this was quite controversial, wasn't it, last week? So 53% believe the government should provide the data compared to just 18% who say we shouldn't, we don't have a right to know.
Look at that, 29% say they don't know, haven't got a clue.
Can't be bothered to think about it.
Can't be bothered to think about it. The poll also has more dire news for the Conservatives. Asked their voting intentions, 45% of respondents said they intended to vote for Labour, with the Conservatives on just 19%.
Yeah, and crucially, though, look at that stat for Reform UK. The vote hovers around 14%. Not far off the Tories, while the Lib Dems, who used to be the third party in the country, of course, now relegated to just 9%. The Greens, what are they on, 8%?
That's interesting. So the Greens could actually, take over from the Liberal Democrats.
Yeah, what a change of scenery.
What a change of scenery. So when asked who they trust to stop the small boat illegal migrant crossings of the English Channel, twice as many people backed Labour. 15% said they'd trust Labour to stop the boats compared to just 7% for the Conservatives, although I must say 15 versus 7, neither are doing good in the trust factor for that one.
Yeah, but by far the most people said they trusted neither party, 55%, which is really what we've been hearing over recent weeks. A damning indictment on both what people are calling the uni party, Labour and Conservatives. What is the difference?
I remember reading a poll a little while ago. Only 1% of people believed that the government would actually stop the votes or that the Rwanda plan would work. And when asked whether the UK should leave the European Convention on Human Rights if ECHR judges block more Rwanda flights, 36% said yes, we should. 31% said no, we shouldn't. So an interesting collection of polling data there.
Yeah, the ECHR one definitely quite damning, and also the migrant crime table. Should we get the reaction now from our panel today? The assistant editor of the Daily Express, Asa Bennett, and political commentator...
Asa, thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, there we go, Asa.
Pleasure, great to be here.
Sorry, you're solo, Asa. Beg my pardon. I was going to throw you in the mix with a bunch of other people. Asa, what do these quite damning poll results tell us, specifically the ECHR and also the Migrant League table?
Well, I think the polls in general are going to send Tory panic into overdrive because it confirms what we've seen over the last few months, which is that no matter what Rishi Sunak does, he's not cutting through to the public. The distrust is so deep that even on his, shall we say, do or die pledge to tackle the boats, he's not done it, and therefore the poll rating continues to die. As they can see that Rwanda is still something that's not yet taking off, and when those being polled have been asked, they decide that yes, if pushed, then we may well consider the ECHR leaving the Court of Strasbourg, which is very dramatic. And I think certainly I can imagine if pushed, the Tories would one day consider that as a sort of Brexit, Brexit the sequel referendum. But above all, what we have to appreciate is all big questions culminate in, OK, who do you want to be Prime Minister? And Rishi Sunak, he went on Your People's Question Time. He tried to set himself up as a contrast to Keir Starmer. And again, the people are making clear that they are not convinced. Above all, I think it's interesting because when you look at where the numbers are, yes, Reform is only 5 points behind the Tories, really chomping at their heels. So logic would suggest that if you could reunite the right, that is where the biggest proportion of Tory voters are going. Maybe they have a fighting chance. But even then, no, because it seems the voters are deciding, at the moment, anyone but the Tories.
Asa, do you think there's actually a chance of the Conservatives in the run-up to the next election saying we'll hold a referendum on the ECHR? I imagine they could frame it in such a way that it could mobilise a lot of public opinion, couldn't it?
I think such a referendum would definitely get attention. It would really change the terms of debate, but it's not one you'd expect Rishi Sunak to do. If it was the Tory party led under, say, Suella Braverman, Priti Patel, or many other figures, I'm sure they would be tempted. But then we have to remember who the current Prime Minister is. So given that, you're looking at an election contrast where it's going to be fought on the economy. Just as your poll picks up, that the economy is the biggest concern of voters. Rishi Sunak will try and say that, stick with the plan, don't go back to square one. And all Keir Starmer has to ask is, but do you feel better off after 14 years of Tory government? And then you look at the rest of the poll, and that shows that many people will sympathise. On migration and so many other fronts, they see that 14 years of promises, the results really need to speak for themselves. And that's why Sunak is going to have his work cut out, getting that extra term.
Yes, I think that's right, isn't it? Thank you, Asa. Appreciate your time on this. But, he's giving a cash boost to cricket.
Oh, Sunak, I saw you tweeting about that this morning. was it you tweeting about that?
No, I wasn't tweeting.
Oh, someone was saying, is this where our money's going?
I mean, cricket's all well and good, and there was a charming little video that accompanied it of Rishi Sunak, batting cricket. But anyway, should we talk about this a little bit more and look at some of the other top stories? We're delighted to be joined by the CEO and founder of Youth Vote UK, Alex Cairns, and the author and commentator, Nikki Hodgson. Your reaction to that polling, are you surprised by any of it, Nikki?
I'm really not. I mean, he's just in the wrong job. Rishi Sunak should be in Silicon Valley. That's what he's suited to. He's not suited to leading this country. This new thing about getting us out of the ECHR, well, he should have done that months ago if he was serious about it. It feels like it's the last card that he's got to play. And I don't think he's serious about stopping the boats. I don't think he is serious about illegal migration. I don't think it bothers him as much as he makes out. I just think he's playing the public.
Well, Patrick Christie's had Robert Jenrick on a few nights ago, the former immigration minister, and he revealed exclusively that he was meant to have a meeting with Rishi Sunak every couple of weeks about migration. I think they did meet sometimes, but Robert Jenrick claims that they rarely, if ever, discussed migration, either legal migration or the small votes problem, which is extraordinary.
Well, I mean, if that's the core issue, if that's the sole thing that the Conservatives have to offer, then you'd think that would be a priority, and it obviously isn't.
Yes, and if it comes to immigration, if they want to play that card, of course, reform will always go further. Alex?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because that's probably why reform will do quite well in the election. I think they've got a very clear position on it. I think it's quite obvious the Rwanda plan hasn't worked. I think Rishi's really going to die on that Rwanda pledge. He's not going to budge on it. And I think really, actually, the public are kind of looking at the data and thinking, well, you're not really bringing the numbers down. So if you're not going to bring the numbers down on that, and inflation hasn't come down as much as we think it should, then what can we trust you on,
What about Reform UK? They've obliterated the Lib Dems in terms of that third party.
They absolutely have.
Record highs now, just behind the Tories.
I mean, it's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, they're taking... it doesn't matter if Rishi Sunak tries to move to the right of the party. Reform are already there. Yeah. And I can imagine in the coming months we'll see Tory MPs defect to Reform, especially if they have a good win at the election.
Well, we shall see. But shall we move on to something a little bit different? The civil servants are to strike over working from home. What's all this about, Alex?
Yeah, so civil servants are going to strike because they're being ordered to return to the office for just 2 days a week. So I guess...
hang on a minute, let me get this straight. They only have to work in the office 2 days a week.
Yeah.
And because of that, they're striking.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting one because what happened post-COVID is I think a lot of people, I think silly in my view, thought that actually that would become the new norm. We're working from home permanently, 5 days a week. And actually, I think employers quite rightly are saying, actually, we want to see you for a few days a week. Actually, it's quite good being in the office, being collaborative. And I think...
And check you're alive.
Yeah, check you're alive, exactly. And actually check your colleagues are alive sometimes. But I think all jokes aside, I think it's quite concerning because really I don't think they should be striking. And I think actually if you look at, public versus private sector, you wouldn't see this kind of in private companies. You can't just strike because your boss decides to change the policy, right? So I think civil service need to really understand that 2 days in a week, you know, I don't think it's a massive issue, really.
Well, and it's really insulting to people that turn up 5 days or even 6 days a week. I mean, you know, I have got a lot of time for civil servants because actually they hold the government together when the government's in disarray. And but I know Jacob Rees-Mogg made all the fuss about them needing to be back, but you know, he's the guy that likes to have a kip in Parliament, so I don't think he's got a leg to stand on, really.
Notes, didn't he,
he went around and put a post-it note, where are you? But I mean, it doesn't look good. I mean, you've got to be realistic. You do need to talk to people face to face, especially doing delicate political work. So much of it is about building relationships with people, and you can't do that on Zoom.
There was also a story this week about the civil service striking because of our 0.1% arms sales to Israel. I mean, the civil service have long been accused of, you know, interfering with politics. They should be apolitical, right? They should be neutral.
Well, they shouldn't make their politics known at work. It doesn't mean that they can still have personal views, but they shouldn't let it affect the direction of their work. But the problem is that so many times the government has been, it's kind of been on the wrong side of the law. All the things that Boris Johnson did, you know, like proroguing Parliament, that was unlawful, it's forced them to be more political. That's how they feel, that they can't just sit back and watch things explode.
I guess they forget sometimes that they are servants rather than masters, perhaps.
Yes, but I think it's interesting because they are human, and they're going to be torn sometimes, aren't they? Because they, as you say, they do have views. They probably, I don't know how much they look at the ministers and think, oh, how long is that minister going to be there? Do I really trust? And actually, it's quite difficult because I think we've always seen that, you know, ministers have. I think Rory Stewart was talking about the fact that actually, when he was a minister, it's quite difficult to actually make change and get things done because the civil service do actually have a lot of control.
Sure.
Rightly, wrongly, you can have that debate.
That's not how it should be. We vote politicians into jobs, not lefty civil service.
No, but the problem...
I mean, they took down Dominic Raab, they took down Braverman. Anyone who's, like, just slightly right of centre, the civil service has an absolute hissy fit over it.
Well, I think Dominic Raab and Suella Braverman did for themselves. You know, her comments about homelessness and just so many ill-judged...
Lots of people agree with that kind of thing.
But that doesn't mean it's right. People can agree with something and it can still be morally repugnant.
It's not for the civil servants to make that decision.
Do you know what it is for the civil servants to give her the actual facts about homelessness, the fact that people who are on the streets are, you know, 8 times more likely to die by suicide. They're victims of crime. Nobody, I'm sorry, but it's just ridiculous. Nobody chooses to be homeless. It's a terrible position to be in.
Yes, I think she did fall out with the leadership, that's for sure. Should we move on to something a bit different? Because apparently Trump, Nikki, well, there are fears that he might meddle in our UK elections. How so?
Well, this is interesting. So, former US National Security Advisor John Bolton, who's very well respected and eminent, I've known him for a lot of years, actually. I edited him a long time ago. He has said to the Eye that he won't be afraid, Donald Trump won't be afraid to meddle in this election because he's a man with nothing left to lose. And what we've got to remember about Trump is that he will try to win at all costs. He is a serial liar. He's lied about the value of his businesses. He did have to pay damages to somebody that he raped. That was proven. It wasn't proven in a court. It wasn't legal, but it was. He still denied, but he still had to pay the damages. And he confused his ex-wife with the woman that he had to pay the damages to. I mean, he isn't really, I believe, of sound mind, but he is of completely narcissistic, sociopathic mind.
He might be the leader of the new world, of the free world, though, Alex. He's doing pretty well with the American public.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because he's a very Marmite figure, but actually, if you look at it, so is Biden, and actually, it's really difficult because I can't believe the United States have got to a point that literally is the binary choice.
There's no choice.
You've got someone that can't walk up the stairs, and you've got someone that literally is being, labelled as a narcissist. I mean, I don't know where we've got to.
There has been a choice because they went through the primaries. The Republicans had people like Nikki Haley, Chris Christie. Has been a choice, and the public, in a democracy, as it should be, the Republicans anyway, chose Donald Trump.
But
likewise, they chose Joe Biden.
But the other point about the American elections and American leaders is always it's all to do with how much money you've got to be able to canvass.
Yeah.
That's a critical factor. It's not just a straight democratic choice.
He's allowed an opinion on our election, but I don't think he should be meddling.
There was rumours, apparently, that he might come out and back Reform UK.
Yeah. Yes, I can totally imagine that. But that would make perfect sense for Trump. Yeah. If Trump's in power and he meddles so the Reform get, higher statistics and more seats in Parliament, that would absolutely play into his hand.
I don't think he'd ever do it whilst in office if he was elected, but I think in the precursor to the election, I could perhaps see him commenting. He was always big on Obama making that comment about Brexit, saying we'd be back of the queue for a trade deal if we voted for Brexit. He was massive on that, so I'd be very, very surprised if he...
He's not one to hold back with his opinions, so I'm sure he'll have a view on who should lead this country. We're going to leave it there for now. Thank you, Alex Cairns, CEO and founder of Youth Vote UK, and Nikki Hodgson, who is an author and commentator. We're going to catch up with you both later in the show.
Yes, coming up, though, we're going to be meeting this week's greatest Briton. But first, how will Humza Yousaf's new hate crime bill impact football in Scotland? We'll be speaking to a former Celtic and Rangers player to find out. This is Saturday Morning Live on GB News, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together. For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
One more story in. Milton Keynes, absolute chaos in the city. 300-odd youths arrested or at least involved in a
stampede.
A stampede. Yeah, what's been going on?
A stampede through the...
there we are.
This is the video. So this is a stampede through a shopping centre in Milton Keynes. I think, Amy, you live there, don't you? You live nearby.
For those on radio, we can see literally hundreds, scores of kids.
I think there are about 300 kids.
Are they in school uniform?
Yeah, quite
yeah. This is as they've broken up from school, presumably.
Security tried to intervene. They've been accused of being heavy-handed. But I think this speaks to the fact that the landscape of youth services has just been decimated, and there's literally nothing for kids.
So hang on, whoa. You think that this has happened because social services have been diluted?
Youth services.
This is because there's no police around, there's no oversight, there's no deterrent, and 300 kids think that they can run through a shopping centre, frightening shoppers out of their lives.
Going to a shopping
Amy,
centre.
sorry, my kids would not be behaving like that because there's no ping pong available at the local.
Aren't your kids like age 4 and 5? These are teenagers, and our teenagers are headed into a world where there are no leisure services.
It's got nothing to do with crime.
If
we up the ante on basketball, it's not going to stop kids being stabbed on the street.
What creates antisocial behaviour is having nothing to do.
It's lack of discipline in the home, lack of discipline in the home, and lack of policing on the streets, and a judiciary and a penal system that is utterly liberal.
You're going right to the end of the line. What about the preventative measures?
But what about the people that these people affect by running through a shopping centre and stampeding? When there's mothers with kids in prams frightened out of their lives, and we're worried about the social services aspect
talking about
that's perhaps led to it.
You're talking about stick, right?
Yeah. So how long does your solution take to resolve it? Mine takes about 30 seconds. More police, bang them up. Yours...
Russell, should parents be fined?
More police, bang them up.
Absolutely. And the kids should be taken to task.
Oh, it'll be fine. I'll be home.
24 in the morning. Don't forget to keep sending me and Ben questions about topics in the news this week. We're going to chat through them all with our panel and guests. You're asking us questions.
What's the question?
They're asking us questions. People at home are going to write in
later
and
in the show.
ask
Sorry,
questions.
I was just thinking about, you said it's 10:24 in the morning, and in my head I was thinking, well, it's not 10:24 at night, is it?
No, it's
Hopefully
definitely not. Although, you know, you don't know down here.
No.
Anyway.
Yeah, there's no windows in our studio, so that's what Emily's referring to. Let's see what you've been saying on the emails. Cheryl, good morning to you, Cheryl. You say it's more important that we control our borders than be a member of a foreign court, talking about the prospect of potentially leaving the ECHR.
Well, that's exactly what Rishi Sunak did say, didn't he? He said it's more important to control illegal migration than stay a member of a foreign court or something to that effect.
My only issue with Rishi is why now? Why are you so reactive?
Does he mean it?
You're losing in the polls. You're facing death's door politically. You should have done this a year ago, 2 years ago.
But, £35 million for cricket. Alexander says, I think Sunak is a good man who is in charge of a party that has gone bonkers. Yes, is it a bit crowd control at this point for Rishi Sunak?
Yeah, I'm not saying he's not a decent man. He's just politically maybe a bit naive.
Maybe. Jill says, in relation to what Asa said, we must remember who the Prime Minister is. We must also remember that the Prime Minister was not elected. Yes, that is also an issue for a lot of Tory voters or would-be Conservative voters. They don't accept that he should be the leader.
No, well, I think I was going to talk about Liz Truss. She was at a birthday party in midweek and a lot of Tory voters think that she should still be in office. Obviously not after the economic situation, but that's the feeling amongst a lot of die-hard members anyway.
Well, yeah, let us know what you make of it, or we'll get to some more of your views in a little bit. But tomorrow, lunchtime, the Old Firm derby between Celtic and Rangers will take place at the Ibrox Stadium.
Yeah, and it comes at the end of a pretty turbulent week in Scotland as a new hate crime bill came into force on Monday. The act which makes it illegal to stir up hatred, whatever that means, based on a range of characteristics.
Yeah, so some lawyers are suggesting that all fans at the match tomorrow could technically be arrested under the new laws due to the chants Celtic and Rangers supporters will sing. This is crazy.
Yeah, well, so Rangers supporters tend to sing songs about the Pope, Catholic priests, and you can imagine kind of the nature of what they're singing. So technically, we're going to find out anyway. Lawyer Alistair Bonington, he's told the Daily Mail that the different songs could breach the Religious Hatred Act, part of the new act.
Yes, that's one section, isn't it? That's one characteristic religion that it protects, apparently.
So, joining us now, ahead of the Old Firm derby, tomorrow is Scottish footballing legend Stephen Pressley, who did play for both Celtic and Rangers. Good morning to you, sir. Thank you for joining us. So,
pleasure.
What's going on here? I mean, traditionally at the Old Firm matches, the crowd's pretty feisty. There's some, pretty unsavoury chanting, which is just confined to the stadium, and people take it on the chin, They don't take it too seriously a lot of the time. But they could all be nicked tomorrow at the Old Firm derby.
Yeah, well, the first thing to make clear is that my understanding is that there has been no talks that have taken place between the Scottish Parliament, between the football clubs, between the SFA or the police department. So I think everybody is very much in the dark regarding the implementation of this law. So, it's going to be very interesting how it's managed tomorrow.
Do you think any of the fans who turn up for the game will actually be thinking about these new laws? Do you think it will be in their mind that they need to be a bit careful with what they chant? Or do you think they won't give it a second thought?
Well, I think they should always be careful about what they chant. The issue you have is I think we all understand what hate and abusive language is and behaviour is, and this type of behaviour should never, ever be condoned. The difficulty you have is there's a grey area below that. And it's a hugely contentious area, an area that's going to be very, very difficult for the police to manage. One of the other difficulties are that, of course, there are songs, and again, I will relay this, they shouldn't be condoned, but many of the supporters that sing those songs don't sing them with hatred. It's almost like they sing them as they're part of the club they support. So again, it's a very contentious area.
Stephen, I have to ask you, as a legend of both clubs, who did you prefer playing for, Rangers or Celtic?
Well, the truth of the matter is I enjoyed both. My experience at Rangers was as a young player, and when I played there, I don't think I fully appreciated at that stage of my career the experience of playing at such a massive club. But then, going to Celtic 10 years later, and having that experience behind me, I really enjoyed and understood what a privilege it was to play at such a club like that. So, both were great experiences and both different in their own right.
And just for our viewers who aren't familiar with football or the Old Firm derby, explain to us the atmosphere. What does it feel like playing in that game? What does it mean to fans of both teams and Scots?
Well, to use a word that's obviously been highly debated this week, is there is a lot of hatred there. It's a very unique derby. It divides the city in many ways. But as a player, it's you realise just how important this game is, because in the aftermath of that, it can spill over for long periods and overtake your life in many respects, because walking the streets of Glasgow is a lot better experience when you're on the receiving end of a win. So, you know, it is, and it's a unique experience, a wonderful game of football, and a game as well that's serving up many subplots as we lead into that with, you know, the projected weather, the incident with the referee. So it's going to be a really interesting match.
Yeah, it's going to be a feisty one. Stephen, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, it's definitely a sight to behold. It's one of the fiercest football rivalries in the world, and the atmosphere in the stadium is just electric. My family, my wife's family, are half Scottish, so I have a little bit of experience.
I'm half Scottish too.
Are you really?
Hence the red hair.
Where's your family from?
Well, I have family in Aberdeenshire.
Oh, yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Dundee.
No, not Dundee.
No, my wife's family.
Right.
Yeah. No,
Your wife's from Dundee.
I know a bit of Scottish geography.
Oh, well, there we go. You know, we're learning lots about each other.
There we go.
But there's been other controversy in football. Aidan McGee is with us. Now, there's outrage at Queen's Park Rangers. Do tell us more.
Goodness me, yeah, I can't believe this, how far this story has spread. I mean, I saw it in the Sun and the Mail this morning, and it's spread to Italy and France and elsewhere around the globe as well. Now, let me take you through it. There's a mascot at QPR called Jude the cat.
Right.
So what this is, back in the 70s, QPR had a lucky black cat. It was a real cat. When it came to commercialise the cult of the mascot, if you like, they decided to get a mascot suit. So for the benefit of our radio listeners, Jude the cat is in shot right now, and here you'll see him do a bit of a dance. He's well into that dancing, yeah, he really is. So he's caused controversy in the past when Bernie Ecclestone and Flavio Briatore owned the club about 15, 16 years ago. In their culture, particularly Flavio's, he decided that black cats were unlucky. Anyway, he got a stay of execution. The fans demanded him back. He's now been sacked, we understand, as of this week, for being a bit over-friendly with some of the female supporters.
Oh, no. Jeez.
So the rumours started seeping out of the club on about Monday, and everyone thought it was an April Fool's joke, but we understand that, according to the reports this morning anyway, that they've gone through with...
Oh, look, he's shaking his bottom at some women there.
Yeah, I know, that is really disappointing.
Is it the same guy in the suit, the whole...
We don't know. We don't know. I mean, I can't imagine the same, but I mean, I actually interviewed him 20 years ago, right? Now, this is funny because they wouldn't let me interview him in person. I had to interview him over the phone. So I asked him about his pre-match meal, and he said, yeah, I'll just have some cream and lap it up out of a bowl. That's about as...
So do we think that maybe he
I think there'll be
dancing too closely to some
possibly
things?
Look, an ex of mine some years ago had a photo with him, and there are pictures of him around. Grabbing
have we got it?
Oh, we have.
Is that your...
There he is. It is, and so that's makes on the left.
She agreed to have the photo, by the way.
Yeah.
Are you still friends?
Yeah, we're still friends. Okay. Yeah, I'm friends with everybody.
You didn't split up after Jude...
I wasn't pleased, I must admit. I wasn't pleased.
So for people listening to the radio, Jude the cat, the QPR mascot, is kissing Aidan McGee's ex on her hand. Gentlemanly, perhaps?
Yeah, exactly. I was a little bit perturbed at the time, but I've managed to move on from it.
So anyway, Jude's been sacked. He's got no lives left.
He's got no lives left. He's been shown the flap.
Right. Wokery?
I don't know, actually. I'm not sure. We don't know until if they get rid of the cat completely, and they have another mascot called Spark, and that's a tiger. But the fans will be annoyed if they singing today. I'm going there this afternoon. We're playing Sheffield Wednesday, big game. We've been in great form recently. I hope getting rid of the cat doesn't signal an era of bad luck. We really hope not. And if they're singing,
the furry cat's got the boots. There you go.
I know. The furry Lothario is his name.
The furry Lothario. Thanks very much, Aidan McGee,
nice to
sports journalist. Fantastic stuff.
Right, coming up, we're going to hear the inspirational story of this week's Greatest Britain. But first, do you always tip waiters at restaurants, do you?
Always.
I do most of the time if they deserve it. Aidan?
Not always.
Not always, no. Yeah, it depends. We'll reveal why we're asking that question in just a few minutes. This is Saturday Morning Live on GB News, Britain's news channel. Stay with us.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Farage, Monday to Thursday from 7 p.m.
The real danger to our democracy, of course, always was China. And we learn overnight. We'd heard in August last year that the Electoral Commission's website had been compromised, their database had been compromised. And we learn overnight that, yes, actually, the Chinese Communist Party now have access to 40 million voters in this country and their data. Well, to respond to this in the House of Commons earlier, we heard from the Deputy Prime Minister, Oliver Dowden.
I can confirm today that Chinese state-affiliated actors were responsible for 2 malicious cyber campaigns targeting both our democratic institutions and parliamentarians. That is why the United Kingdom has today sanctioned 2 individuals and 1 entity associated with the Chinese state-affiliated APT31 group for involvement in malicious cyber activity targeting officials, government entities and parliamentarians around the world.
I don't know how tough that sounds to you in terms of a response, but one Member of Parliament, Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, was, shall we say, less than impressed.
Whilst I welcome these 2 sanctions from the government, it is a little bit, this statement, like an elephant giving birth to a mouse. The reality is that in those 3 years, the Chinese have trashed the Sino-British Agreement. They have been committing murder and slave labour and genocide in Xinjiang. We have had churches broken and, in Hong Kong, false court cases against Jimmy Lai.
Great quote, elephant giving birth to a mouse. I rather like that. Sir Ian's here. I'll ask him about where that came from in a moment. But it's all going to be OK. It's all going to be absolutely fine.
Welcome back. Ben and Emily on Saturday Morning Live. It's 10:37. Now, it's a long-running debate that I think we've all had. Do you tip every time you go to a restaurant? Do you tip only if the service is good, or should you not feel obliged to tip at all?
There's a bit of a trend among some young people just to take off the tip, take off the service charge. But the restaurant chain Ping Pong has scrapped tipping altogether, and they're starting charging customers a 15% brand fee instead, which the restaurant claims goes towards franchise fees and other brand-related expenditure.
Sounds fishy. So that's automatically added to the bill at the end of a meal. Diners can opt out of paying it, but they're unable to leave a tip for the staff, 90% of which would have gone to the waiting staff themselves.
So they have this service charge and they can't then leave a tip for the wait staff. No. The company says that it will instead give employees a pay rise to match earnings staff would have received with service charge distribution.
Sounds very complicated. Joining us now in the studio is celebrity chef Jameson Starks. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
First question, should we tip?
I think you should definitely tip, especially if the meal's good. But ideally, you want to be able to tip and give it to the people who are actually doing the work.
That's what I was just saying to you off air. So I always like tipping or enjoy tipping, especially if the service was good. But I always ask the waitress or the waiter, is this going to you, or is your boss going to swipe it, or is it going to be shared amongst the other staff? Because I want to tip that person, not the collective staff or, you know, not least the business.
Well, I think that's part of the worry, isn't it? I mean, automatically you get the bill and there's either 12.5% service charge on your bill, whereas this company are looking to do like a brand fee as such, which I think is ridiculous personally, because you're showing brand loyalty by going there in the first place. So, you know, you could go to other chains, you could go to other restaurants, whatever, but, you know...
Do you think waiters and waitresses are receiving less in the way of tips than they used to, just because, you know, people used to carry around cash, used to be able to just slip someone, you know, a £5 or a couple of pounds, whatever, at the end of your meal, and it would go straight to them, they just pocket it and off they go. Whereas now it's either through the system, it's applied already to the bill, and this brand fee, whatever this is.
100%. I mean, it doesn't sit right with me at all, to be honest with you. Realistically, you want to make sure that person's getting it direct, rather than going through the owners, whether going through tax, whether going through everything else, you know.
So this restaurant has introduced this brand fee because there's new legislation coming in a couple of months which forces businesses to share tips amongst their staff. So this is their way of getting around it. They said, OK, we'll do a brand fee, whatever that means, and we'll keep the money for ourselves. But tipping, regardless, I just read in the introduction there, 90% went to staff. So before that, businesses were taking 10% for themselves anyway.
If not more. Sometimes it's even more than that.
What a scam.
Well, it's pretty ruthless. It's, you know, it's an industry where it's hard to make money anyway. You know, you rely on brand awareness, you rely on your customers to come in there and eat, and that's showing your brand loyalty anyway. So why put an extra 15% on top of an already expensive bill anyway?
Here's a question for you. How much should we tip? What's the percentage?
Well, in America, you know, it's kind of 20%.
20?
But the wages are slightly better in America. The cost of living's not quite as high as here.
You've just exposed me there for being a bit of a cheapskate, because I thought 10% was the normal rate. Am I being a bit cheap?
You're being a bit...
A little bit.
Really? How much? 15? You're still cheap as well, that's not 20.
I actually genuinely think you should just pay what you think it's worth. I mean, if it's bad service and bad food...
So you think you shouldn't tip if it's bad service and bad food? Because some would say it's not always the waiter or the waitress's fault.
Well, if it's bad food, I'd always tip the waiter. But if it's bad service and bad food... No, I wouldn't, personally.
If it's bad service but good food, you should probably go into the kitchen and give a few quid to the chef.
Slap a £20 note down on the
on the pass.
table.
I think it's an age-old debate, isn't it? Some people are very mean and they take off the service charge for no good reason.
Well, do you know what? I'm not going to name names, but when I was a kid, we used to leave tips for waitresses, and somebody who I used to hang around with would always, when they're leaving the table, just pick it up because they think we shouldn't tip. Tip people.
True, yeah.
Really?
Have you heard of that before?
I have, yeah. I've known actually well-known celebrities come into the kitchen and actually buy some beers for the staff or do something a little bit more personal. But the company who we're talking about, Ping Pong, they basically turned around and said that they're paying the staff more, which generally they are, but from the 1st of April, the wages went up anyway, minimum wage. So they're in fact actually getting paid £1 more than the minimum wage.
They're being so sneaky.
Whereas in theory, they'd probably get more than £1 tips every hour anyway. So it just doesn't weigh up for me.
Doesn't weigh up. I wonder what Ping Pong will think of all the PR they've now got.
Wow.
They might not like it. Jameson Stocks, thank you very much. You are a celebrity chef. But coming up, we'll be talking about finding love after loss. But next, this week's Inspirational Greatest Britain will join us live in the studio.
Yeah, this is Saturday Morning Live with Ben and Emily on GB News, Britain's news channel. Stay with us.
Hello, a very good morning to you. Storm Kathleen has arrived, but it will mean different things to different people. Very windy in the west, much warmer across the UK, particularly in the east. It's not going to be a washout through the rest of the day. Most of the rain went through overnight. That's clearing northern Scotland during the morning. Showers follow from the west, but well-broken cloud will lead to some sunny spells, especially towards the southeast. The wind, though, is strengthening with the risk of 50 to 70 mile-per-hour wind gusts for western coasts of the UK. Big waves and additional hazard, disruptions to travel possible. But the wind is coming from a warm direction, so 21, 22 Celsius possible somewhere like East Anglia. With that warmth, we're going to see mild nights and a cloudy night for many, with further spells of rain moving through much of the UK, but generally avoiding the far south and southeast. The blustery winds continue, but the strongest of those gusts transfer to the northwest of Scotland by dawn on Saturday, and it's a frost-free start across the UK with that wind mixing the air up. A bright start for many, especially towards the southeast and the far north and northeast, but there'll be cloud and outbreaks of rain or showers for many others. Now, the showers mostly will affect western and central parts of England, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland. Best of any brightness will be towards the southeast. Another warm day here, 16 or 17 Celsius, but very windy, again to the northwest.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country.
That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, here on Saturday Morning Live, we love to give a spotlight to people who do amazing things. And today, we've got a fantastic individual who founded a charity during the COVID pandemic.
Yes, Idris Patel set up Supporting Humanity back in 2020 to provide mental health support to those in need. Now, during the pandemic, the charity delivered more than 92,000 hot meals to NHS staff. Wow, 92,000, and that was over 40 days.
And since then, Supporting Humanity has gone from strength to strength, with 500 volunteers now facilitating the charity's work, which involves community events and trips for the vulnerable.
Now, Idris's philanthropy has even earned him a well-deserved British Citizen Award.
And we're delighted to say that Idris, our greatest Briton, joined us now. Congratulations, Idris. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Tell us about your charity's story. It was a baby of the pandemic, you described it. How did it all turn around?
We call it a COVID baby because we were reached out by the NHS for some support for free hot meals initially. Just 300 hot meals for over 5 hospitals. However, within 24 hours, that had increased to 900 hot meals.
So why did the NHS reach out to you for meals? I mean, where was their food?
So restaurants were closed down, takeaways were closed, and they had people, surgeons, consultants working long hours. They were getting sandwiches and various other items, but they were after free hot meals, or hot meals specifically. But by the time we started, we'd gone to 900 on the first day, and within 10 days, we were doing over 2,500 free hot meals for the NHS, vulnerable, and various other ambulance services.
Wow. And there you are on screen. So how many of you were rustling meals together?
So during the COVID, we had restrictions on knee spacing and various other items. So we had Bart's health inspector help us with various different things on how to do. We also had the chaplaincy of the hospital. We had over 500 people with overall helping with everything, that including dropping off the meals, cooking the meals, packing the meals, and all different items.
And how did you grow so quickly? I mean, most charities do struggle to expand and grow and get recognition. And how did you do it?
Honestly, I feel I've always been blessed. So overnight, literally, I went out to businesses and various other people for help. We found a poultry farm who agreed to donate us chicken and various other poultry items. We found a local business or a restaurant who was going to help us cook. So we brought the cost down to £1 a meal to pack. And then we found volunteers to help us deliver. Also, at the same time, the hospital reached out to us because their mortuaries were getting overfilled and they needed help with Muslim bodies to be moved out because all the mosques were closed. So where they've been used to washing and shrouding within mosque, there was bodies being built up in the mortuary. People were worried about taking these bodies away. So we also started a funeral service where we were picking up bodies, washing and shrouding, and that was a 24-hour service, and then taking them to the graveyard.
And 4 years on, you're now doing day trips for vulnerable people, elderly people. You've got coaches on. You take them out to places.
Yeah, so we're a mental health support and bereavement support charity. We do various different workshops. Trips is one of the things that we do. We have all different sorts of workshops, including menopause, mental health, stress, anxiety, depression. We do workshop with schools where we go out to schools and talk about these items because there's a big stigma around mental health. As you know, physical health is one thing, but at the same time, there's mental health. And unless we really talk about people's mental health, people do actually these days go through a really bad period.
They definitely go hand in hand, don't they? Physical and mental health. Correct. So, Idris, tell me about yourself. How did you get to that point? What's your background? Tell us a bit about your life.
I'm a single-parent family. My mum, from a very young age, always believed in working hard. She didn't believe in claiming benefits. So from a very young age, whenever we used to wake up, my mum was just coming back from her first job, which would either be a cleaning job or a factory job. Then she'd make us breakfast, get us ready, get us out to school, and then go for a second job. But one thing she always said to us was, always remember one thing, it's not what the world can do for you, but it's what you can do for the world. And she's always drilled that into us to say, make a difference to other people's lives, and believe me, it will make a big difference to you. So that's what brought me into charity. And also the other thing is my faith, which is I'm a Muslim, and Muslims believe in strongly about charity work. And those two things came hand in hand. And ever since, I've just been blessed that whatever I sort of put my foot forward to, it just becomes a bigger picture and it grows and grows.
And we talk a lot about mental health on this channel, and lots of people are coming out and talking about mental health quite a lot. But with relation to bereavement, we don't often talk about that. And people, when they have a loved one who dies, for example, there'll be quite a lot of support maybe for them in the first couple of weeks. But then that support dies down, people get on with their lives elsewhere, and then people can feel very lonely and isolated, can't they?
Oh, it's a very strong subject that we talk about. So we regularly do workshops for people who have got bereavements, and that could include their family members, friends, or various different items. People grieve in various different ways and find support in various different ways, and that's what we talk about, we work with. And unfortunately, especially in the younger generation, the suicide rate in the younger generation is at the highest at this present moment. So we do workshop in schools to talk about the stigmas of anxiety, stress, depression, how to talk about these, how to deal with these things, who to go out to and who to reach to, because the youngsters, the younger generation, or whoever's struggling with these things, don't want to talk about these things. They don't want to pick up the phone anymore. So how do you do so? E-chat, for example, is becoming a new thing. These apps have become a new thing. And we're trying to encourage people to reach out and seek help, because unless they have this help, the suicide rates will continue, the attempted suicides would continue, and people are shielding from these things, and it's a very worrying time.
And I'm just reading the brief here. Your aim when you started was to stop one person from committing suicide. And there was an incident on Tower Bridge in London, wasn't there? Tell us about that.
Approximately 2 years ago, someone reached out to our charity, because we have a telephone line where we do support and we talk to people, and someone reached out to us ready to jump from Tower Bridge. And we were able to talk them through the support, and also agree with them that we get an ambulance out to them and the police out to them. We stopped them committing suicide, we got them sectioned. And we've been regularly in contact with this person who's now doing regular charity work in talking about suicide and what they were going through and why they were ready to commit suicide, and the help that what we did for them, how it helped them now to turn their life around. These are the sort of things that really matter to us, because to me, when I started the charity, that was one of the most important things, to save one life. And now today we talk about, we're hoping to save hundreds of lives, not just by attempted suicides, but even prior to when they're caged up in these things about...
What a wonderful thing to have done, to be able to have talked someone down from suicide and ending their life, and then pursuing the same thing with others. I mean, that must give you such a strong sense of, well, I guess pride, but it must be very emotional too.
So I always say there's a very strong motto in our charity, which is there's no I in team. So without the team in the charity, we've got over 500 volunteers, and every single person is a special
500.
person. Yeah.
Gosh.
No one in the charity is paid. We're 100% volunteer-run charity, and everyone brings their own skills. So we have people from solicitors, teachers, ex-judges, we've got housewives or normal people who do factory work, and various people who find time to volunteer and come out and work with Supporting Humanity.
And if anyone watching at home or listening to us wants to get involved or wanted to come help volunteer, how can they do that?
So Supporting Humanity have a very good website page, which we regularly ask for volunteers with no amount of volunteers is enough, as we say. We regularly ask for people to volunteer either with our charity or various other charities. But if you are interested in Supporting Humanity, if you go on our page...
What's the website address?
supportinghumanity.com. So
simple.
It's very, very simple, Supporting Humanity. And we're also on all the other social media pages. And like we said, we've got various different activities that we do. It's not just the telephone line, but we also have various activities like the trips. We do menopause, we do welcoming days for the over 65. So we regularly have workshops on Wednesdays, Thursdays, and even Tuesdays in different places where they just come in. We feed them. We do various activities from exercises. Last week we were doing drilling and electrical work with the elderly.
Drilling and electrical. Well, there you go. Thank you so much for coming in and speaking to us, Idris Patel, and Supporting Humanity. You can contact Samaritans, by the way, on the helpline 116123 if you need help or you know someone who does.
Yep, lots more to come, including our Showbiz section and more of today's top stories. Join us in just a few seconds. Stay with us.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather, on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. Storm Kathleen is the main talking point today, bringing some very strong winds across the UK. It's situated out to the west at the moment and slowly pushes its way northwards as we go through the rest of Saturday. Those winds will be strongest across western parts of the UK with yellow wind warnings in force. We could see gusts here, particularly for Northern Ireland, Irish Sea coast of 50 to 60 miles an hour, perhaps even up to 70 miles an hour this afternoon, so that could cause some travel disruption. Elsewhere though, it will be a generally dry day, some patchy rain in places, some heavy showers across western parts of Scotland, but highs of 20 or 21 degrees, perhaps even 22 across eastern parts of Anglia, so likely to be the warmest day of the year so far. Through Saturday evening, we see a band of heavy rain pushing up from the southwest, and there could be some hail and thunder mixed in there too, so some local flooding possible. Winds will gradually ease a little, but still remaining breezy overnight and turning a little drier across much of England and Wales into the early hours of the morning. And generally a mild night, temperatures holding up well above freezing across the UK. Sunday starts a little bit drier across England and Wales, but another band of rain pushes its way eastwards through the early morning. It will still be a very breezy day, but the strongest winds on Sunday likely to be across northwestern parts of Scotland. We could see gusts here of 60 to 70 miles an hour, so perhaps some travel disruption in places. There will be plenty of showers around on Sunday, and it will still be a mild day with temperatures above average and highs of 16 or 17 degrees.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You could win our biggest prize giveaway so far. First, there's an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. Plus, courtesy of Variety Cruises, a bespoke 7-night small boat cruise for two worth £10,000. With flights, meals, excursions and drinks included, your next holiday could be on us. Choose any one of their 2025 Greek adventures and find your home at sea. We'll also send you packing with these luxury travel gifts. For a chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 26th of April. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together. For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel. Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online. This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Very Very good morning to you. I'm Ben Leo alongside Emily Carver, and this is Saturday Morning Live.
It is indeed. It's great to have your company this morning, and we have got an action-packed hour for you.
We have indeed. All of the day's top stories with CEO and founder of Youth Vote UK, Alex Cairns, and author and commentator Nikki Hodgson.
There they are. And after former footballer and actor Vinnie Jones reveals that he has found love again after his wife passed away, we'll talk to a dating coach about finding love amidst grief.
Go on, Vinny, good man. And congratulations are in order for GB News' very own Peter Andre as he welcomes his new baby daughter. There's a picture on screen if you're watching on telly. What a cutie. Journalist Eddie Phillips will join us in the studio to talk through that and the rest of the showbiz news very shortly.
Lovely news.
And we're also going to be speaking to an inspirational young explorer who's raising awareness of dementia.
We are indeed. Now, don't forget, we want to hear from you throughout the show. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.com.
Yeah, lots flying in on tipping, actually. Do you tip? How much should you tip? Do you tip all the time, depending on service?
He's a cheapskate.
Well, you are as well, 15%. I thought 10% was a done thing. Apparently it's 20, you do 15, so we're both cheapskates. Before all that, anything else? Here's your news with Ray Addison.
Good morning. It's 1 minute past 11. Our top stories this hour. A Conservative MP says he was the first whistleblower to alert police to the parliamentary honey trap sexting scam. Bosworth MP Dr Luke Evans says he was the victim of cyber flashing as the Met launched an investigation into unsolicited messages with Leicestershire Police. On Thursday, Tory MP William Ragg told The Times that he'd sent intimate pictures of himself to someone on a gay dating app and was then manipulated into providing colleagues' phone numbers. So far, around a dozen MPs, staff and journalists are known to have been targeted.
The first set of messages I got was on a day I was with my wife, and I got a one-time open photo on WhatsApp of an explicit image of a naked lady. As soon as I got these, the next day I reported it to the police, the authorities and the chief whip.
10 days later, I got another set of messages. This time, however, I was sat with my team in the constituency office, so we were able to record the conversation and catch photos and videos of the messages coming through, including another explicit female image. I put my name up to say, well, I hope others come forward. I'm just pleased I blew the whistle, reported it to the authorities, and it's now being looked into.
Dozens of flights have been cancelled as Storm Kathleen brings strong winds to parts of the UK. Pushing in from the Atlantic, the storm is bringing gusts of up to 70 miles an hour to Northern Ireland and the west of Britain. Around 70 flights have been called off so far. A yellow weather warning for wind is in effect until 10 p.m. tonight and covers Cornwall, much of Wales, parts of Lancashire and Cumbria, and up into central Scotland and Northern Ireland. Temperatures could also reach 22 degrees in the east. Rail passengers are facing fresh travel chaos as train drivers continue striking in a long-running dispute over pay. Members of ASLEF at 6 companies have walked out, leaving some areas with no services all day. Chiltern, TransPennine Express and Northern will not run any trains, while there'll be reduced services on Great Western, LNER and Heathrow Express. Engineering work means there will be no trains between London's Paddington and Reading. Nearly £17 million worth of drugs has been seized by the Royal Navy after it intercepted smuggling speedboats in the Caribbean Sea. Across 2 operations, HMS Trent seized 200 kilos of cocaine following a port visit to the island of Martinique. Defence Secretary Grant Shapps says it shows the Navy's commitment to disrupt and dismantle drug traffickers. Former Prime Minister Boris Johnson has described calls to end arms sales to Israel as shameful. There's been international demands to hold Israel to account for the deaths of 7 aid workers, including 3 Brits. John Chapman, James Henderson and James Kirby were all killed by an Israeli airstrike. Israel has since dismissed 2 officers, describing the deaths as a grave mistake. Lord Cameron says the UK will now carefully review the findings of a report into the incident. Workers across the country have today been granted the legal right to request flexible working from the day that they start a new job. Previously, it only applied if someone had worked for their employer for 26 weeks or more. Flexible working is defined as a way that suits an employee's needs, for example, having flexible timings or working from home. Experts believe it could benefit millions and increase productivity. Reckless Tory tax pledges will leave home buyers worse off, Labour is warning. Now, the party says that the Conservatives' long-term ambition to scrap national insurance contributions will create a £46 billion black hole. Their analysis suggests first home buyers could be £280 worse off each year due to an increase in mortgage repayments. Shadow Minister Alison McGovern told GB News the policy will harm young couples.
But it's hardly fair to put at risk that position that people are in when they're trying to buy their first home, when they're really saving and making these sorts of unfunded tax commitments has that effect. It's worse for people who are in that position who struggle to be able to buy their own home.
Police have released footage of a motorcyclist caught in a sting operation riding at grossly excessive speeds. Kieran Jones was recorded travelling at 80 miles an hour in a 30 zone on the A22 in East Sussex on 7 separate occasions. He had concealed his number plate to avoid detection. When finally caught, he admitted a string of charges, including dangerous driving. Jones was disqualified for 3 years and ordered to complete 225 hours of unpaid work. Well, more than 150 people have been rescued from floodwaters in Australia after 24 hours of torrential rain. 72 rescues were carried out in Sydney alone, where low-lying suburbs saw dangerous flooding with a month's worth of rainfall. Residents in New South Wales were warned to move to higher ground as emergency services received over 4,000 calls for help. Officials say flood levels in Western Sydney are continuing to rise. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now back to Ben and Emily.
Welcome back, Ben and Emily, on Saturday Morning Live. It's 11:07. Now, it's time to hold on to your hats again because yet another storm is on the way, this time named...
Storm Kathleen.
Kathleen. It's set to rage across the UK and Ireland this weekend.
Yes, the Met Office have said that gusts of 50 miles per hour are expected quite widely on Saturday, while some exposed areas, particularly up on the coast, will have up to 70 miles per hour gusts, with large waves also likely. I must admit, actually, here down south in London, it's actually a rather nice day today.
Yeah, shame we're stuck in the studio.
No, it's not a shame.
I'm sweating. There's no fans in here today. Just before we came back from the news, I was saying I'm sweating. I want to be shining.
You're supposed to give the illusion that you're totally comfortable, you know, so that everyone at home thinks you're cool as a cucumber.
I'm honest.
No, getting a sweat on.
Emily said, at least you're not stinking. So there we go. Despite this, temperatures will remain mild today, with some areas of the UK set to see highs of 20 degrees for the first time this year. Joining us now, and to hopefully help us storm this out, is GB News Northern Ireland reporter Doogie Beattie. Morning, Doogie. Oh, it's definitely a lot more windier where you are compared to here. What's the consensus for the rest of the UK?
Yes. Well, good morning to you all. Yes, Storm Kathleen made land here about 20 minutes ago, and it is getting steadily worse. I can assure you those gusts are already up to about 60 or 70 miles an hour. It is high tide in the Irish Sea, and we're only about 25 miles from the Isle of Man. So you can imagine if this high winds make it further inland, we will definitely see structural damage and trees down. So if any advice today in and around the coastal areas, stay at home, don't come out.
Thanks, Doogie. Please stay safe. It looks like you're on the edge of perishing, dare I say.
On the edge of perishing.
Quite literally.
Doogie, thanks so much for bringing us that. It does look extremely extremely windy, but a beautiful day as well.
I feel
Sun
a bit
is
bad
shining.
complaining that I'm hot and sweaty in here. Well, at least I'm not doing
You know,
that.
he always does such a good job. He gets right into the thick of the storm for us. But should we get to some of your views on the old tipping? It's divided people. Ollie says, I'm sorry, the service charge is a tip. I won't leave any more. Yes, to be honest, if service is included already, it's unlikely you're going to leave an extra tip.
Yeah, no, definitely don't do that. Well, unless you want to. Don't listen to me. Tessa says, I've always thought tipping is unfair. Do the kitchen staff and cleaners get tips? I don't know. That's a good point you made earlier with Jameson, the chef.
Yeah, probably not, although I do think some businesses share them out. So the cleaners probably would get something. Liam says, we don't want to become America where tipping is seen as mandatory. Yes, you could go somewhere and then be chased down the road.
Yes, I've heard stories of Brits in America not leaving tips because it's not in our culture and literally being chased down the road by angry waitresses who want their money. And Michelle says, I always tip. I used to be a waitress and it isn't very fun.
I did some waitressing. I was absolutely terrible.
Good tips?
I spilt a whole gravy boat down the back of a man.
Oh, dear. I take it he didn't tip you?
No. Was
that your last ever job?
His wife was absolutely furious.
Oh,
this was back in the university days.
Well, you found your calling now, at least.
I found my calling now. Well, should we have a look at the top stories of today? We're delighted to be joined by the CEO and founder of Youth Vote UK, Alex Cairns, and author and commentator Nikki Hodgson. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Well, let's get straight into it with this article in The Telegraph, Alex. BBC denies coverage of Princess Kate's cancer diagnosis was excessive and insensitive. Why are they having to say this?
Yeah, so the Telegraph are reporting that kind of when the news broke that the BBC had kind of been speaking to people behind the scenes, they'd kind of been leaking stories that she may have cancer, and a lot of people felt that like they went too far. You know, she does have a family. It's a very sensitive topic, and I think people felt that they didn't get the balance right about the story, basically. Yeah.
That they went over the top on it. Do you think that they did, Nikki?
Well, it was very difficult to get the balance right, wasn't it? Because everybody was gunning for knowledge. There were so many conspiracy theories on the internet. Social media was rife with theories, and people were desperate to find out what had happened. And then basically the BBC delivered, and then they were in trouble for it. So, I mean, this really is a problem with the viewers for me. It's not the problem with the station.
Interesting. So you think people shouldn't bother complaining about such a thing? Well, especially when it's all over the tabloids.
Well, exactly.
Anyway.
I mean, people were prurient and they wanted to know, and then they find out, and then they feel bad because it was something so terrible.
But well, that's the thing. You can't win, right? Everyone's saying, well, why don't we know anything? And then the moment they find out, they're saying that actually, like, they went too far. It's like, well, which one do you want, you know?
Yeah.
Like...
So I think the BBC received around 100 complaints, but they stood firm behind their coverage, saying, we broadcast in full the highly personal video message. Our coverage reflected the significance of the story and the outpouring of support for the princess. I mean, some people were saying it was like Princess Diana had died. It was the same sort of, you know, emotional, intense coverage. But as you said, people for weeks were demanding clarity on what was going on.
Worse on TikTok, that's for sure.
Was it?
Absolutely.
It was banned on socials. I think it's interesting because I think a lot of people feel like she was pushed into that announcement early. Maybe she wasn't ready, you know, and actually I think the public need to appreciate that because everyone was saying, where is she, where is she? They then cannot moan when there's a video and then people still to this day are saying, is it her in the video?
Yeah, there's still
like,
conspiracy
guys, grip.
theories.
It's definitely her in the video. Like, who do you think it is?
Yeah,
you know,
I mean, the problem for the royal family is that they lost control of the narrative and the PR department does not understand social media.
Yeah.
I mean, a big part of your strategy when you don't want to disclose something is to get on top of rumours, actually. You know, you have to get on Reddit, you have to get on social, you have to get on TikTok. You need people posting, maybe not obviously, but you need people to direct the conversation with facts. And it just isn't... They just don't have it. I don't know what's going on there. I think the biggest problem actually for the royals is that traditionally the PR department has always been people that are very pro-monarchy, people that have been quite closely connected to the royals. But actually what they need is some people that are just at the top of their game that are actually Republicans, people that can think about the worst possible comments that are going to come and work from that side forward.
Now, I want to get on to another story, which I think has been given to you, Nikki, which is this story of Wayne Couzens.
Yes.
Now, he's launched, this is reported in the Mail today as an exclusive, he's launched a formal complaint after prison officers stopped him receiving a 50th birthday present from his mum. Now, he's a rapist and murderer, Nikki. Do you think he deserves the right to a birthday present?
Gosh, I don't know. This is complicated. He's a serious rapist and murderer, and he's got a life sentence, a genuine life sentence. And what he did to Sarah Everard was absolutely beyond the pale. It chills me even saying that, because, you know, I was at the protest, and I lived in Stockwell near Clapham at the time. It was very, very affecting, and it really changed women's faith in the police, but it really affected the nation. I mean, remember the mood of the nation when that happened. It was just so terrible. I mean, the thing about presence is can you actually set rules for some prisoners and not for others? What was the present? Do we know? I mean,
apparently it was a book and some clothes to celebrate him turning 50. He's claiming, Alex, that bosses at HMP Frankland, where he is, prevented him from receiving this. So essentially, he's issued this formal complaint. I mean, what do you think? Do you think rapists and murderers should be able to lodge complaints about not receiving birthday presents? Should they be allowed to receive birthday presents?
No, they shouldn't. I think...
You think not?
Yeah, actually, I think even people on the left or the right of politics would probably agree that if you're in prison, things like birthday presents, things like luxury meals, things like, you know, I think there's still some reports that people in prison cells have, like, PlayStation 4s. I don't think the public will be very happy knowing that actually someone that committed a serious crime gets things like birthday presents. Like, and I know that might sound, you know, not kind, but the reality is, if you do something that bad, I think you can't complain.
The report goes on to say the killer suggested he might even seek financial compensation for his family after missing out on receiving his birthday gift, because his mother won't be able to get a refund.
What an absolute joke. Wayne Couzens is a monster of the most depraved and highest order, and he is lucky he's even living in a prison that was such a generous country. This man should not be getting presents. He, dare I say it, shouldn't even be communicating with the outside world. I mean, the absolute terror and the grief that Sarah Everard and her family went through, and the nation went through, Nikki, as you touched on as well. This is one of Britain's worst ever, most depraved killers. He shouldn't be getting damn birthday presents in prison.
His mum won't get a refund.
Who cares? Who cares?
Well, shall we move on to Alex? The Daily Mail. Buckingham Palace is to be guarded by French soldiers for the first time. What's all this about?
Yeah, so Buckingham Palace will be guarded by French troops in a drill approved by King Charles. So, you know, he's still very much active. I know a lot of people are kind of saying what's happening to him as well. You know, that's another kind of issue. People do need to give them some space when they've got some treatment. To mark 120 years of friendly relations, obviously, with the French. I think we've got good relationships with them. I'm not sure why we need the troops there. I think, you know, I don't really get it. And I actually think if a lot of tourists come and they see French troops, they may be a little bit confused. They might be like, are we in Paris? Are we in London?
I'm very disappointed, because what will they be wearing? Definitely not... I mean, they won't be in traditional garb, will they?
No, they won't.
With their lovely hats on. I mean, I definitely think you get very confused, especially if you've got off the Eurostar in a kind of haphazard way. Maybe you've had a bit too much to drink. You might think you've gone back to Paris.
That's what I mean. You'd be so confused. Where are you? Like...
Where am I? Do you think... how do you think French and Anglo-French relations are at the moment, Nikki?
Not terribly
good. Do you give it much thought?
No, I do actually, because obviously we talk constantly about stop the boats, and there's a big issue there with our relationship with France. You know, the French, there's no love lost between us and the French, let's be real. They hate us. We don't speak their French well. You know, we don't drink their wine properly. They just haven't got any time for us, and fair enough.
This is the 120-year anniversary of the Entente Cordiale. So that improved our relations, of course, but 120 years on, are we still sniping at each other?
These guards need to be at Calais, not in London. Stop the boats coming, do your job, we give you enough money. Was it £500 million
Well, the
a year?
King signed this off. He's clearly happy to have the guards.
Your Majesty, you need to get your priorities straight. Send them back to Calais, get them to stop the boats, for goodness sake.
Oh, Ben, you do make me laugh. Do we have time for one more? We do indeed. Let's go with Boris Johnson. Now, he's accused the establishment of trying to stop arms sales to Israel. What's exactly has he said, Nikki?
Well, he said that it would be insane to ban arms sales to Israel because of the fact that, you know, they haven't defeated Hamas, as everybody actually wants them to do in the West. I don't agree with him. I think it's a little bit rich coming from Boris Johnson, again, who prorogued Parliament unlawfully. This is not a guy who is on top of the law. And I think, you know, even though we only sold 0.4% of our arms to Israel in 2022. It's the principle of selling the arms. It's not the amount of arms. And also the very important fact that we could be very much in contravention of international law on genocide if the weapons we sell are used by Israel for that purpose. You know, Jonathan Sumpton came out and said this week that it really is important that we establish that fact. Lots of judges have warned him. So, you know, he can't say that until we have very, very carefully proven that we are not contributing to a potential genocide.
Yes, what do you think?
Listen, I think a lot of people just on both sides want the war to come to an end, right? And I think actually, you know, there's a lot of politics here, there's a lot of tit for tat, there's a lot of people that, you know, have to be really careful about the wording, but really and truly, lots of people just don't want to see young children being killed in a war, right? And actually, if by definition, as you say, the arms are being sold to a country that are using them in a way which is killing innocent children, absolutely. I don't care what side of the debate you're on, you should just want that to come to a conclusion. What I would say, it's not just the UK, there are other countries that are selling arms as well. So there can't be double standards here. If the UK would take a position, the other countries have to as well, because you could argue that actually it's kind of pointless. If the UK stops, Israel might find another buyer. So it's got to be a kind of position globally that, you know, the war wants to come to an end.
And if Israel isn't able to arm itself, then it faces a very insecure future. Thank you very much.
Thank you both. And if anyone was offended by my use of the D word with Wayne Couzens' birthday present there, very sorry. I'm sure you weren't, though, but just to tick the boxes.
That's a nice apology.
Yeah.
That's a nice apology. Still to come, we're going to be joined by Ellie Phillips for all of your latest showbiz news. Looking forward to this. And we're also going to be hearing from one inspirational young man's challenge to raise awareness of dementia.
Yes, can't wait. But up next, can you find love after a loss? A dating coach is going to reveal all. You're watching Saturday Morning Live with Ben and Emily, live on GB News.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Do you mind if I ask you a little bit about Sebastian? It really amazes me how a mother who can lose a child in such a shocking and unexpected way, so little, so precious, can then turn that grief into something so positive. How did you find the strength to get up, get a camera crew, as you say, travel to the other side of the world and investigate all of this?
I was angry at Sebastian for dying. You know, you feel like saying, God, 32 years later, and I can still get very, very upset about it. I was angry that something that while he was born and lived with me and slept and then died, they were actively campaigning in New Zealand to try and stop this happening because they had a very high cot death rate there. They had the lady, the Anne Diamond, if you like, of New Zealand, a television presenter called Judy Bailey, went on telly every night and said, if you're just about to put your baby down to sleep, put him on his or her back, not the tummy, and this will help. And their cot death rate plummeted. And I went out to New Zealand and met her, and it was anger that drove me to come back and demand that we have the same advert here, the same campaign. And of course, I got all this complete nonsense from the Department of Health saying, you know, oh, young mothers do not watch television, I was told. In other words, while New Zealand mums were being told how to save their babies' lives, we actively denied British mums that advice during the time that Sebastian and others were dying.
And the other point, I suppose, to make is it's helpful to educate all generations, because when I had my babies, my mum would say, he's not settling, just stick him on his tummy, he'll be much happier, that's what we did with you. And we had to say, well, things have changed, and, you know, but it's about educating everybody, because it's not just the mums that get their hands on the babies.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Right, it's 11:23 in the morning. Welcome back. Don't forget to keep sending me and Ben questions about topics in the news this week. Please do keep them coming in. Now, we've got lots of views on various things that we were discussing in our paper review. Ellie says, the entire media behaved appallingly when they were speculating about Princess Catherine. No one comes out well at all.
Yeah, Joanna says, Wayne Couzens is shameless. Prison is primarily about punishment. We should never lose sight of that.
Is that seeking compensation because his mum can't get a refund?
No, it's just a joke,
I mean,
isn't it?
quite incredible, isn't it? Dasher, no, we weren't all demanding to know what was going on with Kate. The press were. Most of us don't insist on knowing the minutiae of other people's lives. I'm not sure I believe you, Dasher, though. A lot of people were talking about it in day-to-day life who weren't in the media. People were fascinated. I mean, social media went absolutely bonkers.
And the amount of
Catherine.
texts I got from friends and family saying, you know, because we work in the media, do you know anything about Kate? What's going on with Kathleen?
Yeah, everyone was interested. I mean, my sister, she really wanted to know what was going on. But shall we move on?
Yes, so some heartwarming, rather, news now. As this week, it's been revealed that former footballer and actor Vinnie Jones, a legend, he's found love again after the death of his beloved wife Tanya in 2019.
Yes, friends of football's former hard man have reportedly said that his new partner, who is also his PA, has brought the light back into his eyes after the pair's working relationship developed into love.
Oh, and Vinnie, who's released a book about his grief in 2020, he's previously admitted fears of never finding happiness again, and he's spoken about how his new love, Emma, has, quote, calmed him down after years of hard drinking and depression left him rotting inside.
Gosh, well, according to reports, whilst the actor will never get over the death of his wife of 25 years, he did say that his new partner and happiness shows that a flower can grow and bloom from the darkest of times.
Oh, I love that. So how can we find light at the end of the tunnel? Here to talk about this now is dating coach Johnny Cassell. Good morning to you, Johnny.
Good morning.
So, can you find love again after a bereavement? Clearly, in Vinnie's case, you can. But is it a hard process? I mean, any tips for people going through the same as Vinnie?
Totally. I think what Vinnie's done well of, and I think what's part of his healing process, is write the book about his wife. And I can imagine he got a lot of therapy from doing that. It's certainly something I would encourage people to...
Quite therapeutic.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It allows you to sort of, you know, acknowledge it and kind of move on and hopefully get yourself into a better place to welcome in something new. Look, it's one of those things where you have to repair the relationship with yourself first. And it's so subjective of how long that time it is for everyone. Use the support of your friends. You know, you remind yourself your friends are there for you. There's professional help out there. There's incredible resources through books. And yeah, like trainers, coaches, relationship people, like just get the help you need. But there should be no sort of, oh, it's a 6 month thing. It's just as long as it takes.
A lot of people never do find love again. Lots of people stay on their own if their partner has died. I mean, in what time... Lots of people will make judgments if someone's partner has passed away and then they're immediately back on the dating scene, for example. Is there an acceptable amount of time? Or is this just an individual thing?
It's very well pointed out. I was just discussing with a friend in the green room about this exact case where I think it was the partner from the Wanted singer that passed away.
Oh, yeah.
She was straight into a relationship within like 6 months. And there was an outrage of that. But, you know, as we're rightfully discussing, shall I say, you know, that person is grieving as she's losing someone and getting to a place in her mind of perhaps bringing someone in new. And we've got to think about the partner that's left us. You know, what would they want for us? Would they want us to sit around the house and just be sitting there in all this grief? No, they want the best for us and they want us to move on and find a place of happiness. So I think you need to sort of keep telling yourself that story as opposed to, I'm not going to allow anyone new in my life ever again. You know, my heart was with this person. Your heart can still be with that person, but we've got to allow space for something new to come
and
in.
as you said, if you think about your deceased partner who's left, I mean, there'd be no situation where you would ever imagine they wouldn't want you to be happy.
Exactly.
With that. But what does it change when how does it change when there's children involved and it's a single parent left with kids and they're introducing them to new partners?
Again, this is something that's going to take time. It really is. And at the early stage, there might be a few people that you're dating and experiencing and seeing if there is the chemistry, see if that is the new person. So you've got to be a bit clever about it. You've got to make that decision where you feel that you've put enough time in the bank. And there is no right way to do that. It just needs to be in good time when you feel like this is someone that is invested in me in a good way.
Do you think it's a good thing to be open, though, if you are moving on and you are dating, to be open with your children, whatever age they are, or should these things... Should you only introduce a new partner to your children once, I don't know, you've been together for 6 months, a year, or...
Yeah, I'm dealing with...
Difficult question, I know.
It's very fresh on my mind because I'm dealing with a situation with a client at the moment. She's got children. The guy she's dating's got children. And the caveat is in the custody clause, he can only introduce a new partner after 12 months.
Oh, really?
So I will advise... I will advise anyone that it comes to, drawing out those agreements not to have that in place. Because that can really mess up the natural progression of that new relationship, because you're going to have to wait for 12 months for it to move into the next chapter. So that's something I didn't even think about until it was brought up.
Well, God forbid it ever happens to me, but I'd probably want to make sure that the new partner was, as dead set as possible, because the last thing I'd want is to introduce my children to partner after partner and after partner, because especially for young children, I can imagine that's probably so confusing.
I think what you need to put in there is a few commitment tests. This partner needs to show to you that they're going to introduce you to the friends. You're integrated with the friendship group. A trip away. Conflict. Conflict is something that we need to be able to manage at a mature level. So it's not to shy away from this, but if someone is showing you these levels of commitment and maturity, then
you need to get your first fight out of the way.
Exactly.
Yes,
yeah.
I think that's very good. That's very good, isn't it?
The fake,
you need
the fake
to learn
breakup.
how you deal and communicate with that, because it's not always going to be, dates to nice restaurants and walks on the park.
I just mimicked punching you then, but of course.
Yeah, not that sort of fight.
Of course, not that kind of fight.
Thank you very much, Johnny Castle, dating coach. Great to speak to you about all that. Really interesting.
It gets me very emotional talking about that kind of thing.
It's something you don't want to think about, is it?
Exactly. You put yourself in I'm thinking in my head, well, what would I do if that happened? And then, it just raises lots of...
Doesn't bear thinking about, but it is something that people do have to think about, of course. But thanks, Johnny. We've got lots more coming up on the show today, including the latest from the Showbiz headlines. But first, it is your all-important news headlines with the lovely Ray.
Thank you both. 11:31, our top stories. A Conservative MP says he was the first whistleblower to alert police to the parliamentary honey trap sexting scam. Bosworth MP Dr Luke Evans says he was the victim of cyber flashing as the Met launched an investigation into unsolicited messages with Leicestershire Police. On Thursday, Tory MP William Ragg told The Times that he'd sent intimate pictures of himself to someone on a gay dating app and was then manipulated into providing colleagues' phone numbers. So far, around a dozen MPs, staff and journalists are known to have been targeted. Dozens of flights have been cancelled as Storm Kathleen brings strong winds to parts of the UK. Pushing in from the Atlantic, the storm is bringing gusts of up to 70 miles an hour to Northern Ireland and the west of Britain. Around 70 flights have been called off so far. A yellow weather warning for wind is in effect until 10 p.m. and covers Cornwall, much of Wales, parts of Lancashire and Cumbria, and up into central Scotland and, of course, Northern Ireland. Rail passengers are facing fresh travel chaos as train drivers continue striking in a long-running pay dispute. Members of ASLEF at 6 companies have walked out, leaving some areas with no services all day long. Chiltern, TransPennine Express and Northern will not run any trains, while there will be reduced services on Great Western, LNER and Heathrow Express. Also, engineering work means there will be no trains between London's Paddington and Reading. Nearly £17 million worth of drugs has been seized by the Royal Navy after it intercepted smuggling speedboats in the Caribbean Sea. Across 2 operations, HMS Trent seized 200 kilos of cocaine following a port visit to the island of Martinique. Defence Secretary Grant Shapps says it shows that the Navy is committed to disrupting and dismantling drug traffickers. Well, for the latest stories, why not sign up to the GB News alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Martin Daubney. Weekdays from 3 p.m.
Danny, there's an irony here, isn't there? And that is this. On the one hand, the BBC expect older viewers to cough up more, and yet every opinion poll in the land shows us, Danny, that older people are the least satisfied with the service they get.
Well, the BBC don't give a damn about older people because, as I discovered when I was binned for being 50 and white from the BBC in the Midlands to diversify the lineup, they're after a younger audience because the longevity of the institution, that's the BBC, Martin, relies on the next generation of licence fee payers. And this is quite important, and it's a great point that you've raised. Anybody who's over the age of 50, certainly 60, the BBC doesn't care about you because they're interested in attracting the next generation of licence fee payers. And when those 25-year-olds that they're after at the moment become 40 and 45, they'll stop caring about them too. Otherwise, the BBC just won't exist. It relies on new blood, if you like, when it comes to the licence fee. So that's a great point. They just don't care about middle-aged people.
And yet, they're now floating the idea of older people paying more. How would that work? Would it be means tested?
I know if ever you wanted to satisfy your curiosity that the BBC had a socialist agenda, it's the fact that they want the proletariat to pay more, to not pay, and the bourgeoisie to pick up the bill. This is classic Marxism for you. I know we're treating this lightly, Martin, but how would they means test you? Are you going to have to provide evidence of your bank account? And of course, people's financial situation, they change. You know, people's finances are fluid. So one year you may be what they class as wealthy, and then the next year you're not. So it's a situation that I find just impossible. How it's going to work, I just don't know. It's something that I just don't feel happy about.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, Ben and Emily on Saturday morning night, 11:36. Shall we read some emails out very quickly?
Yes.
Just on losing a partner, Joe says, losing a partner is the hardest thing imaginable. I remember feeling resentment towards friends who'd ended relationships voluntarily when I lost my wife.
Yes, you know Ricky Gervais, he has that Netflix series where he
so
loses his
good.
wife to cancer.
What's it called? Afterlife.
And he gets really, really grumpy, but slowly he starts to enjoy everyday things.
Such a good series.
And slowly he becomes a happier person. But
Yeah.
yes, it makes him miserable and view the world in such a negative way. But he comes around.
Well, he meets that
around.
elderly lady on the bench,
Yeah.
and she eventually sort of opens his heart back up.
Yeah.
And, it's very wholesome.
So it is possible, clearly. Mick says you need to remember that your spouse wouldn't want you to be unhappy. Yes, we were talking about how long it should take or can take and to find a new love.
Yeah, I imagine there's a lot of guilt there with some people. And Paula says, I'm so happy for Vinny. I remember watching him talking about his late wife, and it brought a tear to my eye.
Lovely stuff. Keep them coming.
Yeah, right. Now it's time for your weekly dose of showbiz news, and we're delighted to be joined by showbiz journalist Ellie Phillips, who has some juicy stories. What's going on?
So there's loads to get through this week. The first one I want to start with is Anastasia, and my love, the singer, we love her. 55-year-old American singer who's actually had cancer twice. And this week she spoke on a podcast called White Wine Question Time, which is a really good one. It's Kate Thornton's one. She gets great guests. And on that, she said that she thought she had a brain tumour. This is someone who's had cancer twice. She thought she had a brain tumour. It was actually the menopause. So she didn't recognise the symptoms at all. She had brain fog, she had hot flushes, but she didn't think they were hormonal. She thought they were linked to a brain tumour. And I think it just goes to show how much we still don't yet understand or know or, have out there enough what women go through and these things to expect. She said she went to Switzerland and went to see a doctor and was like, I think I've got cancer again. And they were like, no, this is hormonal. We're pretty certain you're going through the menopause. And she was like, what? And she said it was really, really scary. She didn't know what was going on. And yeah, I think it's just good that she speaks out about it because I feel like the menopause is something that only in the past maybe 6 months to a year have we really started talking about a lot. You've got like Davina McCall, Mariella Frostrup, who kind of fronted that campaign. But you still see big stars like this who've had massive trauma in their lives. I mean, she's had a double mastectomy before, so, you know, she wasn't saying this lightly. That they don't even recognise those symptoms
the menopause,
still.
I mean, it can last for ages and ages, and people think it's over, and then it comes back.
How long?
Years?
Years.
Really?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Women do have it
hard,
tough, don't they?
yeah.
Compared to men.
And it's
men should remember that.
Yeah, they should definitely remember. And also people say, like, how would you not know the symptoms? But it's like me with pregnancy. There's so much I didn't know until I got pregnant, and then I'm like, oh, is this normal? Is this a thing?
There are women who don't realise they're pregnant until the day of giving birth.
Honestly, it's true. It happens. I know one. Yeah, crazy. I don't think I could. I don't think I could pull that. Not in my case. No,
Someone
definitely
might
not.
point it out.
Yeah. So that's one of the stories that's come out this week. Something else, which I think is just so crazy, is Noel Gallagher. So Noel Gallagher, former frontman of Oasis, he said he wants to open a bar called the Eagle's Nest, which is after Hitler's World War II social club in southeast Germany.
What? Right.
Yes, and this is because he said that his favourite war was World War II, which I think is the most bizarre thing to say, because how would you ever say you have a favourite bar? Yeah, exactly, crazy. He said that in his bar that he wants to create, there'll be no food, just bar snacks, no alcohol-free beer, no jukebox, and it would be based on, decoratively, on his flat in London. And the reason he likes this idea so much of calling it the Eagle's Nest is because he loves World War II. And he said that the reason it was such a good war is because it's got the best story and there was a definitive beginning and end to it. And he likened it to Star Wars, saying the Second World War has the backdrop of the Nazis. They're like the Death Star, that sort of thing, good versus evil. And I just think, what would...
He's been in the bar a bit.
Of course, it fascinates people for generations, the Second World War. How many films and books have been written about the war? But to describe it as my favourite war...
Yeah. When 3% of the global population died.
Yeah, a very odd thing to say, but I wish him well with his venture.
Yeah.
A little bit odd, though.
Yeah. I'm not sure I would be going to that bar or that pub at all. And then other news, which is such lovely news. Obviously, Peter Andre has hosted Saturday Morning Live for a lot for GBNews. He welcomed his 5th child this week, his 3rd with wife Emily. They've had a little girl, you can see her there, and they haven't yet given her a name. She is my birthday twin, so she was born on my birthday, April 2nd.
Was it Tuesday this week?
Tuesday this week. So he and Emily already have 2 children together. They've got Theodore and Amelia. They haven't got a name for this baby girl yet, and they are asking for names, so send in suggestions for names for baby Andre.
I've got one in my head with my wife. If we ever, no more kids, but if we ever did have a 3rd, we're not.
No more, but if.
Why?
Why not have a 3rd?
I'd probably just lose. I'd just go mad.
My mum always says she wishes she'd had a 4th.
Oh, yeah. No 3, no 4 for me.
No.
But we have girls' names in our head if that ever happened.
So maybe.
So that sounds like amazing.
That's the thing, is I said
you can't have a name in your head.
Yeah.
We were talking about Pete. I've suddenly moved it on to me for some reason.
Yeah, well, I said to Peter Andre, I said to him, so is this going to be your last kid? And he said, at the moment, yes, but he said if Emily comes to me in the future and was like, maybe we should go again, he said, who am I to argue?
Props to Pete, because he looks like a really devoted dad. He's talked about how much he loves being a dad before. So how many children has he got?
So he's got 5 in total. He's got now 3 with Emily, and then he's got 2 with his ex, Katie Price. He's got Princess and Junior, and he said that they're all absolutely loving this newborn baby.
Quite the brood, eh?
Yeah.
They do say that women are programmed to sort of forget the bad bits of the pregnancy and the birth, so that they then want another.
I can't see me forgetting the bad bits of this, I'm not going to lie.
Just say you're not even giving birth yet.
I know, it's fine. I keep telling everyone I'm going to sneeze and this baby's going to fall out. The birth is going to be easy breezy, no problem at all.
Well, Emily Andre there in the next photo, she looks... There's the baby, of course, but... Mum Emily, she looks very peaceful. I know. Very calm.
See, I could do that.
Yeah.
That's for
little photo shoot.
Yeah, that'll be me.
Do we have any other stories? That's it?
We can go on to one more. So Michael Jackson unexpectedly has come back into the news today because we might possibly be seeing nude pictures of him next year. I know, so random. But basically, did you watch the documentary that was done on him, Finding Neverland? So in that, there were 2 men who sued him, claiming that they raped him that he raped them when they were children. They filed a lawsuit, that failed, but they've relaunched that lawsuit now, and as part of it, they're asking for police to unseal files which show photographs of Michael Jackson nude, and they're saying that what that means is that they'll be able to prove that their statements, which have defining features of his naked body, will show that they could only have known that had they had those interactions with him.
OK. Well, yeah, release them then, because we need to know once and for all. I'm a big fan of Michael Jackson's music, and I'd like to definitively know once and for all, you know...
whether he's guilty of anything.
Was he a wrong un?
And they're saying that this could prove it either way, so we'll see. So if it comes to light, the court case is likely to happen next year.
So are the pictures... I mean, who took the pictures? Are they artistic ones?
So they were taken as part of the paedophilia case against him, which was in 2005,
Wow.
I think. Yeah, 2005.
So when he was being...
So when he was being investigated for paedophilia.
The police took naked pictures of him?
naked photos because of the testimonies against him, and it was part of this, if there's defining features, marks and such like that, that it could prove, and it never got that far.
Well, we'll have to keep an eye on that story for you.
Thanks,
Please
Ellie.
do come and bring us some updates when and if you have them. That's Ellie Phillips, Showbiz journalist. Good stuff.
Yeah, excellent. Right, still to come, we're going to be joined by a very remarkable young man. I've just met him in the green room, and he really is remarkable. He's going to be talking about his challenge for dementia charities. You're watching Saturday Morning Live on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. Storm Kathleen is the main talking point today, bringing some very strong winds across the UK. It's situated out to the west at the moment and slowly pushes its way northwards as we go through the rest of Saturday. Those winds will be strongest across western parts of the UK with yellow wind warnings in force. We could see gusts here, particularly for Northern Ireland, Irish Sea coast of 50 to 60 miles an hour, perhaps even up to 70 miles an hour this afternoon, so that could cause some travel disruption. Elsewhere, though, it will be a generally dry day, some patchy rain in places, some heavy showers across western parts of Scotland, but highs of 20 or 21 degrees, perhaps even 22 across eastern parts of Anglia, so likely to be the warmest day of the year so far. Through Saturday evening, we see a band of heavy rain pushing up from the southwest, and there could be some hail and thunder mixed in there too, so some local flooding possible. Winds will gradually ease a little, but still remaining breezy overnight and turning a little drier across much of England and Wales into the early hours of the morning. And generally a mild night, temperatures holding up well above freezing across the UK. Sunday starts a little bit drier across England and Wales, but another band of rain pushes its way eastwards through the early morning. It will still be a very breezy day, but the strongest winds on Sunday likely to be across northwestern parts of Scotland. We could see gusts here of 60 to 70 miles an hour, so perhaps some travel disruption in places. There will be plenty of showers around on Sunday, and it will still be a mild day with temperatures above average and highs of 16 or 17 degrees.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Back. Thank you for sending in your thoughts on everything we've been discussing, particularly on the showbiz. Nicholas says, I had no idea Anastasia had these health problems. She's an icon of my childhood and hope she continues to be well.
And Daniel, on that very strange Noel Gallagher story, says, "Come on, Noel, stop messing about with bars and get Oasis back together. Hear, hear." I don't think he could cope with Liam, to be honest.
Yes, Louise says, "Amazing news about Peter Andre. So happy mum and baby are doing well."
And Kate says, "Good morning, Kate. Congratulations to Peter and Emily. If he's thinking about a name, how about Nigel?" Emily, sorry, Kate, it's a little girl.
It's a little
So,
Nigella?
not sure, yeah, Nigella.
Nigella, there you go. There's a name idea if you got one. But yes, please do keep your views coming in. But we've got a very special guest with us today, our final guest of the show, who has just joined us. And he is going to talk about his adventures across the globe to raise awareness of dementia.
Yes, Louis Alexander's last feat saw him run a marathon in the remotest area of each of the 7 continents, raising more than £40,000 for charity.
But just last week, Louis announced his brand new challenge, which will see him attempt to become the youngest person ever to swim the 7 classical seas.
Very quick question before we get started. Do you know what the 7 classical seas are?
No.
OK, right, let's find out. Louis is here now in the studio. Louis, what are the 7 classical seas? Good to see you, by the way.
Likewise, great to be back. Thank you for the opportunity. So the classical 7 seas are the Red, Arabian, the Aegean, the Adriatic, the Black, Mediterranean and the North Seas. So they're not the oceans, they're the classical 7 seas.
And you're going to be swimming a marathon, which is how far in swimming?
So a marathon in the swimming world is 10 kilometres.
Right.
So last year I ran a marathon through all 7 continents, you said, and now it's time to come back to the number 7. I can't seem to get away from it, and it's time to go for the 7.
And are you a strong swimmer?
Well, I've done 2 small swims in the past. I did the Alcatraz last year, and I was the only person on the day to finish without a wetsuit. And then 2 years ago...
Why weren't you wearing a wetsuit?
Well, I needed the extra challenge, so I just wanted to try and do it. So I had to put a little bit of weight on, and I did a lot of cold exposure and training, and somehow managed to get across. And then the year before that, I swam from Europe to Asia across one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world, out in Turkey. So I've done 2 small swims.
That sounds...
A little bit, but those were nothing compared to what's coming up this summer.
You wouldn't do the English Channel?
Maybe one day. Maybe.
I don't know if it's clean enough.
I wouldn't if Southern Water keep pumping out sewage into the ocean.
Well, that's amazing. Now, why do you care so much about dementia?
Well, dementia is something I've been fighting for several years now, and it goes back to when I was 19. I'm 24 now, but when I was 19, my grandfather, he passed away from what I like to think is one of the most cruel and devastating illnesses out there. My granddad, he was an incredible man. His name was...
Is that him there?
That's
so what's
him.
His name?
Captain Rick Taylor.
Captain Rick Taylor.
Was he a bit of an adventurer?
He was. He was an adventurer, he's an explorer. He served in the British Army for 38 years, and he served all around the world, but it was sadly that battle against dementia which ended his life. And when I was 19, I had probably the greatest privilege, where my nan pulled me aside and she asked me, would you like to deliver the eulogy at his funeral? And the truth is, at 19 years old, at my granddad's funeral, I didn't know what to say. So I just stood up there and I made a promise, and that was a promise to support this fight until the day we find a cure. And that number, I think, is 40 or 50,000 now.
You're going to make me cry, you're making me emotional. That's such a lovely thing to do.
Well, it's about looking after those generations who are still affected. There's so many. There's about thinking about the generations below us who this is the illness.
How old are you, Louis?
24 now.
Very mature for a 24-year-old, a wise head on young shoulders.
I'll try my best.
How old was your grandfather when he started getting symptoms of dementia, and how long was it until he passed away?
So he was diagnosed at just 58 years old.
Wow.
Which is incredibly young. And his battle was extremely long too. It was 17 years long. And that number is incredibly sad. And actually 2 years ago, I ran 17 marathons in 17 consecutive days to honour those 17 years he lived with the illness, because everyone's journey with dementia
marathons. That is a commitment.
Well, a little bit, but nothing compared to what's coming up this summer.
No, well, that's for sure. But in terms of the dementia awareness, now we are hearing quite a lot at the moment about how there's lots of research going into it, and actually that there may be some progress to actually find a cure.
There is. Well, we hope so. There's been so many small breakthroughs happening recently, which is amazing. And we just keep sort of hitting this drum and we keep fighting, because I'm very lucky to come on today and talk about this. But the truth is, this is a fight with so many people, the carers, the researchers, those working at the charity, those actually affected. This is a whole team fight, and we're all in it together.
And it's such a devastating disease to witness in real time. My wife's grandfather had dementia and he eventually died with it. And I remember I was telling you in the green room, I'd sit next to him and he'd act as if, I mean, bless him, he never knew. He was meeting me for the first time. He'd say, he was Scottish, "What did your dad do?" And I'd say, and then 5 seconds later, he'd say the same thing again. But his wife, Irene, used to get, quite frustrated with it, and it affects so many people. And it's so sad to see someone you love, losing the essence of them just gradually over the years.
Well, they almost become a shell, right, don't they, as you probably saw, like, right in front of you, and it's incredibly devastating. And often that responsibility is put on the carers. And since I started this journey 5 years ago, I've received so many messages, people sharing their personal stories where they've had to leave university to become a carer for their parent or grandparent. They've had to leave their job to become a carer, and that's a professional job, and that responsibility shouldn't be put on people.
And so tell us, just to finish, tell us, how are you training for this huge and challenging adventure?
Well, I got back from Antarctica with the running project end of December, and I went back into training early January for this project. So I'm in the ocean training, I'm training in the pool, I'm training in the body lab, doing all my strength conditioning with my coach, Jake. It's a full-time commitment to make this happen. And
good lad.
And the goal is, of course, that the running project took 14 months, whereas this is going to be done in just 2. So,
and where can people donate to your cause?
So justgiving.com. If you go onto my Instagram, Louis Alexander Explorer, the link's on there, and that's where people can follow along, because it's going to be all done in just 6 or 7 weeks. So it's going to be done back to back, short recovery times, obviously dealing with the heat and humidity.
You must be extremely fit, Louis. Thank you very much,
Thanks,
Louis Alexander there. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, and joining us at home on Saturday Morning Live.
Thank you for joining us, and Emily for stepping in. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Dawn Neeson is up next. I'm back tonight with Saturday 5. Have a great rest of your day.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. Storm Kathleen is the main talking point today, bringing some very strong winds across the UK. It's situated out to the west at the moment and slowly pushes its way northwards as we go through the rest of Saturday. Those winds will be strongest across western parts of the UK, with yellow wind warnings in force. We could see gusts here, particularly for Northern Ireland, Irish Sea coast of 50 to 60 miles an hour, perhaps even up to 70 miles an hour this afternoon, so that could cause some travel disruption. Elsewhere, though, it will be a generally dry day, some patchy rain in places, some heavy showers across western parts of Scotland, but highs of 20 or 21 degrees, perhaps even 22 across eastern parts of Anglia, so likely to be the warmest day of the year so far. Through Saturday evening, we see a band of heavy rain pushing up from the southwest, and there could be some hail and thunder mixed in there too, so some local flooding possible. Winds will gradually ease a little, but still remaining breezy overnight and turning a little drier across much of England and Wales into the early hours of the morning. And generally a mild night, temperatures holding up well above freezing across the UK. Sunday starts a little bit drier across England and Wales, but another band of rain pushes its way eastwards through the early morning. It will still be a very breezy day, but the strongest winds on Sunday likely to be across northwestern parts of Scotland. We could see gusts here of 60 to 70 miles an hour, so perhaps some travel disruption